Okay, so you're going to put together your Maco V58 or your Maco V5000. In our case, we're putting together a V5000. You can tell the difference because the V5000 has a white insulator, good to 5,000 watts, and the V58 has a black insulator, good to 1.5 kilowatts. So 1,500 watts with a black insulator, 5,000 watts with a white insulator. First and foremost, don't you ever forget that electricity will kill you and it will hurt the entire time you are dying. So please, 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 please be careful. Also, there are some sharp edges. Don't rush. Take your time. It's relatively done well as far as finish goes, but you may have to deburr some edges, especially on the radials. And Maco tells us that's specifically so that you didn't have to pay somebody else labor to do that. Helps keep their costs down. A little sandpaper, or some high grit steel wool or something like that will take any burrs off that are required. All right, so the first thing to do is follow the instructions. This part here is super simple to do. As you can see, I'm just doing it on the floor of the garage. And it doesn't really make a difference which way you go, first, second, or third. You can follow the instructions right away. The first thing I did was I assembled the loop. And the way I assembled the loop was, first, I attached the two pieces of the loop together with the flat washer on that side and the lock washer on that side. And that is your finished product there. Your loops are together. Go ahead and snug them up. Don't crank anything down yet because you're going to be doing some adjusting. Then, the next thing I did was I attached these two pieces on the ends of the loop. Same situation on the washers. Then I put the hose clamp on and put that particular bracket under the hose clamp. Then I attached this bracket to the already existing pre-drilled hole with the washers in that situation. And that completed everything for me. Look, it's really important. Take a looky here. You're looking right at this. The left side is the top and the right side is the bottom. A little bit later in the video, we'll tell you about all the correct measurements you're supposed to take to adjust this thing correctly for a great out-of-the-box experience. Last thing you got to do is you got to put this clamp on here, which is from the feed wire. This is actually what drives the antenna. You just put it on there, clamp it down. Same situation on the washers. Lock washer is always at the bottom. This one actually uses two flat washers, one at the top, one at the bottom, then a lock washer again. And again, just snug it in there. You're going to be adjusting that for proper SWR when all is said and done. So that's the first step. Really simple. Do it in your garage. Do it in your living room. Do it outside at 109 degrees if you want to. It's not up to me to tell you what to do. But don't worry about all the alignment of the pieces and the measurements. We'll get to that in a moment. All right, well, let's move on to the second page of installation. That's going to be putting the radials together and putting the uprights together. And I got a couple of hints for you to make it easier once you get onto the top of the roof. When you put these radials together, go ahead and just put the first ones in. Don't put the second ones in yet. Pre-measure, mark them with a Sharpie, and then once you're up on the roof, you can go ahead and stick those second radial arms in place. That way you won't be poking yourself in the eye and running the risk of bending things. So just a little tidbit there. This is what Tom over at Maco, he calls this the spider. The spider goes over the shaft here, and you take the larger of the two nut and bolts, and you put them right in there. Now remember, you're going to be cranking on those to tighten them up, so you probably don't want to have anything in the way of where your coax is going to go in. So make sure you sort of give yourself a nice little space there. Coax can go right in between the two, and you have plenty of room to do any tightening that you need to on this side. Apply your nut to your bolt. Go ahead and wind that bolt in until it just starts to touch the shaft. Give it a little stugginess, and be good right there. Don't tighten everything down yet. Eventually, when you have this to the exact measured place that you need, that is the distance between the end here and the top here, you'll snug that down and then you'll tighten this down to lock it into place, okay? Next item, radials. Okay, your radials are next. The radials consist of 4 radials made of 2 pieces each. 2 times 4, 8 total pieces of pole for radials. They're going to be really obvious once they are. These 4 are all the same length, and they're the only ones that length that are 4 of in the package. And these 4 longer ones, you'll find 5 of them in the package, but one of them is the actual top of the antenna. So 4 of these super long ones, 4 of these shorter ones, those are going to make up your radials. In addition, you'll be using these clamps, those nuts, and those screws. Here's what I do, and you should do the same thing yourself. Before putting them together, pre-screw or pre-bolt, pre-assemble every one of these, all 8 of them. Don't try and slide that on there and then try and mess around by getting all that business in yourself. There's a reason they're made this way. Do that and your life will be much, much happier. So, getting onto it, we're going to be placing those onto these end pieces of the spider. We'll end up sliding a tube on there, sliding this over the tube itself, and then cranking down on them. The instructions show us that the screws are in the up position. And I have no reason to think why you wouldn't want to do it that way. So we're just going to do exactly what the instructions show. An alternative thought would be that if you do it from the bottom, it might be easier to access at another time, except for, remember, water runs downhill, so any gathering of water inside there might have an effect if you're in a very wet area. Might get some rust. All this stuff is aluminum and stainless, so it shouldn't, but we're going to go ahead and do what the instructions tell us to and put these in the up position. Here we go. Okay, well, there's the first one installed, and let's go ahead and do one together. These are solid, so when you start screwing this down, please don't use an impact gun or anything like that. Just use a hand screwdriver. You're going to be plenty strong, and I'll let you know, I'll give you a hint here in a minute as to making sure you're done. So we'll grab a short length unit. You can do this a couple of ways. Go ahead and just, let's stick it on there. The instructions have us line up these holes with these slots. Once that's done, you got a couple of options. You can slide one down from the top, bing, just like that. And you want to make sure that, per the instructions, you're screwing in the down position. Everybody does that. Notice that, if I can get this shot in here, where we have that slot, line that up with the screw. Make sure the screw is straight. You got everybody lined up with these dots here that are on the top and on the bottom to where that is, and then you start using your screwdriver and cranking down. So now you can see that's been put into place, and if the shot will show it, that screw or that nut has actually penetrated through that slice in the tubing and has bottomed out on the stub there. This is nice and tight. That's about as tight as I could get it. Some of you fellows are really strong. Don't break anything. Just once it starts to penetrate there and it's touching the stub, you're done. And this is a case where I would go ahead and make sure that all of these are good and tight once you get them on there, okay? And we'll move on to the next one. The alternative to sliding the clamp from the top is to go ahead and put it over the radial arm first, and then sliding the whole assembly onto the stub. Remembering that you want those slices lined up with those dots. Dropping down the screw and screwing it in. And just again, you know, this is a very, very simple kit to put together. The instructions are fantastic. Truth is, if you want to make it easier on yourself, you can go ahead and assemble all of this with the ring not even on the antenna yet. Just go ahead and lay it on the floor, put it to where you need it, line up that hole, Start screwing down on that bolt. And you can get a little more purchase on the bolt this way with your screwdriver if you do it off the mast itself. Slide the assembly back onto the bottom of the mast and make sure you put the bolt and the nut back on there. Don't forget that locking washer. Snug it up and you'll be measuring very soon. For the final mounting of the spider, once you have the first parts of the radials on, go ahead and draw a line exactly 1/2 inch from the bottom of the bracket that it holds the coax, and then move that spider exactly at the top of the spider to that 1/2 inch mark and snug it down. There it is, nice and tight, using the 9/16. Your next step is to take the outside radials and mark exactly 4 inches from either end. And that's going to denote exactly how far they're going to slide in. Four inches. Now that you've marked 4 inches, from the opposite side of where you marked 4 inches, that's going to be the edge. Go ahead and put your plastic pieces on there. They're little rubber stoppers. And those will keep any and all waters out. And I can't do this with one hand, so be right back. Then once those rubbers are on, you're going to be sliding these into the radials up to where your 4 inch mark is. However, my suggestion is one of two. Either slide it all the way in to make it easier once you're on the roof, or leave them out all together and put them in once you get up to the roof. Just as if you were using the spider installation, each one of these pieces is going to slide on an edge. You're going to stick in your piece, your radial. Oh, this is such fantastic photography here. Work it down to your 4 inch mark. Ooh la la. Get to your 4 inch mark. And as before, clamp down. And that's going to be the perfect measurement for your secondary piece. I think you should do this up on the tower or up on your roof because it's really long, and when you have 4 really long pieces like that, it's going to be too easy to bend, too easy to break. So that's my thought. And so what I've done is I've gone ahead and put the mounting brackets on there in advance and just snug them up a little bit so they don't get lost. And then when you get up on the roof or on the tower, you can slide your radial in, slide this forward, and then screw it down. Well, the good news is we only have a few pieces left. The bad news is we're going to have to wait till tomorrow morning to go on the roof because it's currently 109 degrees out here in the Southwest in July of 2023. So let's keep putting as much together in this nice cool garage as we can. These remaining pieces are the straight up pieces, and their length is very important to what frequency it is that you're going to want to transmit and receive on. These are the frequencies that Maco suggests you use in length for your full-on top pieces. So the straight up pole, which is consistent of 4 pieces, we're going to pre-assemble down here, and then we're going to take a measurement. We're going to mock up the measurement. We're going to put some marks there with the Sharpie. And in our case, we're going to go ahead and run the 27 megahertz or 11 meter or US of A CB radio frequency, which means our overall length must be 248 inches. All right, so notice that we have yet again another mark. We have gone ahead and measured 6 inches from the bottom of each of the top 3 pieces. And that's very important because that's the minimum you want in there so that these guys don't bend. The last piece of the 4, this is the one that's going to get adjustments to it. That's the one you're going to adjust for whatever megahertz you want. We're going to first install these 3, mock it up on the rest of the unit there, and then we'll measure out the proper megahertz length for our frequency, and then we'll go ahead and put a few more tack marks about every 1/4 inch so that we know where we've been at when we want to do an SWR adjustment. Once again, we'll use our good old familiar clamps that we've pre-bolted in, and also note that there are marks, or cuts rather, in these tubes just like in the radials, and we will use the same method as we used for the radials to secure these units here. Such a professional video. Was that my finger in the way of the camera? With regard to these clamps on the final 2 pieces, screwdriver's not going to give you enough purchase. What you really want to do is go ahead and get the 5/16 out and really crank down on that bad boy. And that's going to make sure that you're good and tight. Everything is properly squoze, and it's not going to go anywhere. Don't forget to put that rubber tip on there. Okay, so we have some fine tuning to do. Remember earlier I mentioned a lot of these pieces on the initial setup would be just sort of snugged into place. Well, now they need to be tightened down good. The first thing is we need 6 1/4 inches from the center of this screw to the outside of the ring to the beginning of this bracket. 6 1/4 inches. Get yourself there and then tighten up really good. Now that you've got that 6 1/4 inches, it's time to start snugging this bad boy up. This is supposed to be completely flush. So once you have it flush, go ahead and tighten that down. Alright, this next part is a little tricky. All your adjustment is going to be done right there, going up and down, and then tightening the you-know-what out of that. You need to have exactly 1 inch from the bottom of that piece, which is part of the ring, 1 inch from there to the top of the next ring. Okay? So your points are from here to here. I don't know if I can express that any better. So this is 1 inch from here to here. Alright? So it's the top of this bracket and the bottom of this bracket. 1 inch. Alright, once you've got that 1 inch squared away, you want to make sure that this is an actual circle. You got to stop that business. So if you take a look at this piece here and you line it up with this piece here, you can go ahead and get yourself that perfect circle, right? And then you want to tighten this up and tighten this one up, and then you're good to go. So in order to get this lower piece of the ring flush with the actual flat bracket there, I did have to take some pliers and I had to sort of squish the tube itself when I was doing the initial installation. You'll notice right here you got a big hump, and it's a little bit too much that way, So just give a little squeeze, get yourself nice and flush, and when you're all done, those are straight, that bolt in the back is straight, and your final product is a nice round circle. Nice and round. Okay, so to get to our 248 inches, we measured the base length and how many inches we would need on this top part. So we need 192 inches exposed on the top part from the base part. And that should give us the 248 inches that we need for 27 megahertz. And here's the math in case you wanted to see what it was all about. Ignore this. This is the top of the base piece to the bottom of the base piece equals 56 inches. 56 inches plus 192 inches gives us 248 inches, which is what we're supposed to have for 27 megahertz. All right, well, the next thing to do is get her up there. Oh, yeah.